Hello, my name's Derek Bailey. For those who haven't been following me or don't know me, I've been a wood turner now for over 40 years, doing jobbing work, off and on. And I've done about 30 videos now, and various things like jigs and fixtures, bowls, and particularly concentrating on a very small lathe that's quite affordable, that you can set up in a small area for beginners to start exploring the craft of wood turning. So I've come up with quite a few number of jigs, etc., that have been focused on the Axminster lathe. My latest escapade is an eccentric jig. This is made out of beech. It has an aluminium frontage where you can stick various things with double-sided tape. You can stick various pieces of wood, offcuts and that sort of thing, and shape them. Well, that'll become apparent in the next video. And it's got an indexing mechanism here, so that there's a reference line on here that can be moved round. I don't know if you can see it there. It can be moved in various positions. The front can be taken off by removing this stud. You can just move it to any position. There's 10 holes here, different eccentricities, so I can screw that on there like so. Put the cap on, and then we can put a screw in there to do long spindle work. We could put a screw in there. Well, this is okay. It's nice and compact and everything, but it's for some reason I did 10 holes, which isn't easily divided into other integers, whereas I wanted 12 holes, but might be more useful than 10, which gives me it's more divisible. You can have 4, 2, 6, etc. So I decided to make another one, but I wasn't happy with this aluminium face for the simple reason I couldn't find any double-sided tape that would give a secure mounting for any scrap pieces of wood I want to put on without leaving some messy residue on the wood. And by doing pendants and things like that, you have to get it polished up before you can transfer it and reverse it and stick it on here. Well, of course, the double-sided tape, you don't want to leave residue on a nicely polished surface. So I came up with a modification. I've done a 12-hole version and a new indexing thing where I put numbers on here. And we can have, like I showed you on the Mark 1, this is Mark 2. And I've come up with the idea, instead of the aluminium thing, I've decided to create a recess with some notches here, which allows me to get underneath. When I put double-sided tape on, it allows me to get underneath the pendant. So that goes in there and I can get underneath and prise it off. But I'm still have the problem of sourcing out a decent double-sided tape. Now they have, in America, they have one, but I can't find it over in the UK. So what I decided to do, I've made a template. So this template acts as a guide for doing the same amount, same diameter all the time for all the pendants, so that it would go into this recess relatively closely. There won't be too much play. So if I have a template that I can work to, I can produce consistent diameters to go in there. Now what I've temporarily done, which you'll see in the video, instead of using double-sided tape, I've used ordinary masking tape, well, blue masking tape, and used super glue. And that seems to have worked, particularly when I'm doing grooves in both sides, at the back and the front. You've got intermittent cutting there, where you've got eccentricities, and in the back that's concentric circles, and you create a mesh, which is quite attractive. I found the difficulty if you do an eccentric face there, turn it round and do another eccentric face, that's when the problems start. The concentric bit helps you maintain pressure against a double-sided tape, but if you do an eccentric version, there's more stress involved on the double-sided tape. So it's a question of overcoming those problems. Anyway, to become apparent in the following video. The video will show how I made the modifications to the eccentric chuck, and I'll produce a following video and do a demonstration on the eccentricity in making pendants and goblets and this sort of thing. It's new to me. I've not done this before, so your guess is as good as mine in finding solutions to problems, but if there's any problems, it'll come out on the video. Anyway, that's enough waffling. Let's get on. As I was testing the plywood eccentric chuck off camera, once or twice some of the blanks that I'm going to use for a pendant flew off. The double-sided tape which I was using to hold the pendant blanks against the end cap wasn't quite strong enough. So I've decided to make a new end cap which have a recess in it, which will help to grip the pendant on the outside diameter as well as the double-sided tape holding it against the end cap. I'm measuring the outside diameter of the indexing blank as a guide, and then I'll add a bit extra wall thickness to increase the diameter, not to make it too bulky and too big that I'll get even more vibration when I set it in eccentricity mode. Back to my indexing jig just to drill the 2 holes in the circumference of the new end cap. Here I'm setting the position of the 2 holes at 180 degrees to one another so that I can screw the end cap against the holes in the indexing blank of the eccentric chuck. Having set the thickness of the end cap, I'm now going to part off to the dimensions required. I'm now going to make a recess in the end blank to suit the pendant blank diameters. Without using double-sided tape, I'm testing how secure the pendant is within the end cap. I'm hoping the new design of the end cap will avoid the mistakes and the hiccups that I experienced in my experiments previously. Here I'm testing the maximum eccentricity and how it affects the vibration of the lathe. It does it okay, but as you can hear, there was a little knock and the vibrations carried through into the wall, and some of the things that was on the shelf of the wall fell off. As you can see, I put 3 notches in the perimeter of the end cap and put some plastic packing pieces that I could adjust and hold the pendant blank if it was a smaller diameter than was required, so it would still centralise it. But it didn't work too well, and instead I just used the recesses where the plastic packing pieces went to prise future pendant blanks out of the recess. When you're doing intermittent cutting like this, as I'm putting grooves into the end of the pendant, it's essential that you don't feed in too fast, else it could chip off some of the sidewalls, which I found out to my dismay. Now that the eccentric chuck seems to be working okay, I've decided to go back to the plywood one, which I'd originally made, and turn that into the full-blown eccentric chuck, because it has 12 divisions instead of 10, which I'd, in my previous video, wasn't really divisible. So I reverted back to my plywood chuck with the 12 holes. So in order to make them more durable, I'm filling the holes here with arrowdite, and then I'll use an M4 tap to put threads into the holes and use the arrowdite to achieve a better thread than the plywood would be able to achieve. In order to make all the pendants a consistent diameter, I've made a detachable template in order to achieve that. And I'll just simply put the square blanks of the pendant with double-sided tape onto the end of it and turn it to the diameter that it registers. When using double-sided tape in this situation, you need to have tape that's reasonably sticky and yet can be removed easily, but doesn't leave too much residue behind and makes life a bit difficult cleaning it off. So I'm using ordinary double-sided tape, which is okay for this purpose, but for actually gluing the blanks, I'm looking at other ways of doing it. The beauty of keeping old turnings or scrap pieces is I can use them to hold the blank onto the end of the eccentric chuck without damaging the surface. The biggest stress on double-sided tape is when you're doing intermittent cutting, and obviously when I'm converting this square blank to round, I need to support it with the tailstock. Notice as I remove the blank, it's quite a stringy residue, which is a bit difficult to get off, so this double-sided tape I'm using isn't really suitable for polished surfaces. As you can see, I've made lines on the indexing blank and labelled them with numbers. I'm using M4 countersunk cap head screws to secure the end cap to the indexing blank. I could use 2 screws, but at this moment in time, whilst it's new, 1 is quite sufficient and gives a firm fixing. If you look closely, it's not an even thickness. I didn't cut the blank too well, so it's up to the chuck to straighten it all out. Before I start to use the new end cap, I need to put a decent finish on, a nice smooth varnish finish. So I'm using 2 coats of sanding sealer and 3 coats of melamine to give it a reasonable smooth surface on which I can remove the tape without too much trouble. Because I haven't quite sourced a recommended
double-sided tape. I'm using standard blue masking tape here. A little tip that I've picked up, and using super glue on the surfaces to bind it together, and see how that works until I can source out a reliable double-sided tape. Well, that's it for this short video. I hope you've become interested in my new eccentric jig, and look out for my next video where I shall actually be using the thing to make stuff. Bye for now.